जो है आगे केवल तमिल को बंद कर हो गया। इधर वहीं शुरू करूँ सर। गरम गरम। Good evening and welcome to the second live interaction session of the course on Introduction to Air Transportation and Overview. So we are meeting after a month. Right. So let's start our session today. So this is the agenda for today's interaction session. There are three small items. First is that many students might be intrigued at the various types of winglets that we see on the transport aircraft. So we thought it will be a good idea to talk about various winglet types. Then we'll talk about irregular operations. And this is very much relevant today because of the scenario that is playing out in the Middle East, in the Ukrainian and Russian front, between Pakistan and Afghanistan. There are wars going on in the world at three places. The combined forces of Israel and the US are fighting with Iran. Pakistan and Afghanistan are at loggerheads to each other, and Ukraine and Russia, their war has now crossed 3 years. So therefore, there will be many situations when there are irregular operations for an airline. And IROPS has been covered in the course as a topic on airline operations, but how we can use artificial intelligence in IROPS, that is the agenda for today. And then in the end, if time permits, we'll take up some queries from learners. Let us start by looking at types of winglets and also to answer the question as to why Delta Airlines does not want any blended winglets anymore. So first of all, you know what's a winglet? It's a device that you add to the tips of the aircraft. So sometimes it's called as a wingtip device. And one of the most common type of wingtip is the canted winglet, shown in the figure. It's a very short winglet and it is sloping upwards. The aircraft that have this kind of winglet are both from the Boeing and the Airbus stable. The 747-400, the workhorse of passenger transportation in the world today, the largest aircraft just below Airbus A380 to operate. And then Airbus A330 and 340, the twin engine and four engine transport aircraft with the same or similar airframe that Airbus uses. They both have, all these aircraft have canted winglets. These are short and sloping upwards. Then you have what is called as blended winglets. The blended winglets are very nicely, smoothly extending outwards and they blend into the wing. They do not stand out as sharp edges. The example of this would be Boeing N737 NG, 757 and 767. They look very beautiful, right? And there are several examples all over the world of various aircraft types which follow this particular kind of winglets. As you can see in these images, very popular. The next type is a sharklet. It's like a blended winglet, which I showed you, but it has a backward sloping shark fin shape. This has been adopted in the Airbus A320 family, in the A330 Neo. Neo stands for new engine option, and the modern Airbus A350, as you can see in this figure, A350XWB. These aircraft have a sharklet. So it's a blended winglet, but it has got a backward sloping shark fin shape. Then we also have something called as wingtip fences. The wingtip fences are basically just flat plates, flat vertical winglet extending up and down. Just a flat plate which is up and down. You can call it as a boundary layer fence or a tip fence in a way, not boundary layer fence, a tip fence, wingtip fence. This type of winglets are seen in 318, 319, 320 and 21, plus all the other aircraft that you can see in the image below. A new kind of winglet which has been appearing in the recent past is the split scimitar winglet. These are two curved winglets which extend up and down in opposite directions. Looks very intriguing. You see them in Boeing 737 NG and Boeing 737 MAX fleet. Split scimitar winglets. Now, if you look at the Delta Airlines Fleet 737, you will find that you have this simple blended winglet in Boeing 737-800, of which 77 have been delivered and there are no more orders. And you can also see Boeing 737-900ER, in which case 163 have been delivered and nothing is under order. So in these 240 aircraft of Delta, you will see a simple blended winglet. But if you look at Boeing 737 MAX 10, of which 100 have been ordered but not delivered yet, they are going to come with this split scimitar winglet. So what exactly is this winglet and why this name? A split scimitar winglet, as I mentioned, is the one which has got two distinct pieces. So they are named after a curved Middle Eastern sword called scimitar. So you have a downward facing ventral fin beneath the tip. The main purpose is to weaken the vortex from both the directions. And it ends, if you notice the ends are very sharp points. This kind of a winglet has been shown to lead to around 5.5% savings in the fuel per aircraft. Now, you might think that 5.5 is not a big number, but in civil aviation, if any innovation gives you 1% fuel saving, it is considered worth implementing. So 5.5 is more than 5 times, okay, more than 5 times worth implementing. So therefore, it's definitely a big contribution. And the improvement on blended winglet is 3.3%. So you can see how it leads to the improvement. So I would encourage students to have a look at all kinds of aircraft. If there are any other type of winglets which we have not covered, please share in the discussion forum. I'm observing that we don't see much action on discussion forum. So discussion forum is not only meant for me and for my teaching assistant to write messages to you. It is meant for you also to discuss among yourselves and to share your observations with us. Okay. let's move on to the next topic for today, and that is artificial intelligence powered irregular operations or IROPS. Just as a reminder, let me just define once again irregular operations. An IROP is any disruption that deviate from the planned schedule. That is called as an IROP. They affect the aircraft, they affect the crew or passengers, and they will require rapid coordinated recovery. Otherwise, it will leapfrog into a bigger problem. And because the operations of all aircraft are interconnected, there can be a massive cascading effect if the IROPS in one situation is not taken care. The causes for IROPS are many. It could be technical faults. There could be last minute issues with some component of the aircraft. Most commonly, it is the landing gear or some important equipment which is in the minimum equipment list. Therefore, you cannot fly without it. It could be something like aircraft on ground events or events where there is a component which is required but not available. So now you have to ground the aircraft and you have to get that component from some other airline or from your home base. There could be unscheduled inspections specified by the regulatory bodies when they observe certain issues. Post-accident investigation, there could be recommendations to ground every aircraft and inspect for certain things. So-and-so bolt in so-and-so place has to be checked. That will lead to some irregular operations because of the technical fault. The most common reason for IROPS is the weather. Okay. Especially during the winter months in the western airspaces, you have severe weather disturbances, especially in winter. So these are the times, from December to about February, you will find a lot of IROPS happening in the US and Canada, in those countries, because of severe weather constraints. There are also some airspace restrictions which can come. There could be delays in the slots. That means because of an aircraft who has arrived late, the slot is blocked and so you can't operate. There could be ground stops. Okay. And the other reason for an AROP could be, suppose the crew reports sick. Remember that aircraft are operated by pilot, co-pilot, and the flight and the cabin, pursers. They are all humans, and there could be a situation when your pilot in command is not well. There could be a late rotation because the aircraft operations are done by humans. The capacity of the airport could be exceeded, and there could be some security events. There is a bomb which has been detected in some location, and to defuse the bomb, there have been a lot of restrictions on the movement, and that could lead to some issue. So technical faults on the aircraft because of weather and ATC, or because of operational gaps, one can have IROPS. Now, the scale and the cost of disruption is very important, and we need to understand these numbers. It's not a small amount. The annual cost to the airlines globally from IROPS is estimated to be $35 billion and more. That's a huge amount, right? 1 in 4 of all the flights experience some kind of delay or disruption because things do not go as per plan. Okay, so 1 in 4 flights have some delay. Now remember that there are norms internationally accepted for reporting the delays. And generally it is said that for a flight which is of a reasonable duration, any delay which is up to 15 minutes is not normally reported. That much disruption is pardonable, or it is expected that it will be absorbed within the planning. So we don't even report it. But more than 15 minutes delay in any flight, you will have to report it. It will get documented. It has to be investigated. The reason for that has to be identified and communicated. Okay. Average recovery time to recover from an IROP using traditional methods is about 4 to 8 hours. Okay. But with AI-driven recovery systems, you could reduce the cost by about 60%. So this is a huge amount because the delay because of IROPS is an unplanned expenditure for an airline. This is not something for which the airline gets paid. So they get the same revenue for a regular flight or for a delayed flight. In fact, if the delay is too much, they have to give compensation to the passengers. They may have to arrange accommodation. They may have to provide transport. It will become a problem. So therefore, if we can use a tool like AI to reduce this particular cost, it's worth investigating and it's important for us to know. So now there are two ways in which you can recover from IROPS. One is traditionally, which takes 4 to 8 hours, and the other is using AI. So let's look at these two approaches simultaneously. In a traditional approach, you have a reactive approach. That means you are told that there is a delay and then you start acting on it. So it's a reactive approach, which is always worse than a proactive approach or a predictive approach, where you detect the impeding IROPS before it actually starts. So you can actually buy some time to plan for your recovery. Traditional approach depends on manual judgment by experts. Experienced professionals in the operations department, based on their judgment, they will be able to assess and suggest remedies for IROPS. But in case of AI-powered approach, we used machine learning models and optimization algorithms, which are trained on the database available of all recorded incidents in the past. Through those available data, these models are able to mine information, extract trends, and then using the help of optimization algorithms, they're able to predict in advance and give you more time to respond. In fact, they also suggest sometimes what is the best way to handle this particular IROP. Traditionally, the focus is only on one domain, either on the crew or on the flight. Okay. However, when you look at AI-based approach, you can actually look at multiple domains simultaneously because that will help you in tackling the situation much better. It takes hours, as I mentioned, 4 to 8 hours to build a recovery plan and to implement it in traditional approach. Whereas if you have an AI-powered system, you might be able to come up with the action plan in a few minutes or even seconds. Okay, so it makes a big difference. In case of traditional approach, you can look at limited scenarios because there are human limitations to how much you can predict and how much you can expect. But thousands of scenarios theoretically can be evaluated simultaneously. Because it is a manual expert judgment based, it is very much dependent on the availability and the expertise of the individual, whereas there it is data-driven recommendations. Okay, now how does AI help us in recovery? What is meant by AI-powered recovery? There are three aspects to that. One is the recovery of the aircraft. So what you can do is you can do a tail swap. That means one aircraft has a problem with an MEL item not available. You can say replace the aircraft with this aircraft if you have spare ones. Large airlines can afford it. They have spare aircraft in their itinerary, in their kitty, but small airlines probably cannot do it. You can also borrow temporarily an aircraft from some other airline under wet lease. With wet lease, it comes with the pilot, with the crew, and with the aircraft and the fuel. Okay, you just have to pay the charges for that. So assume it won't probably happen so easily, but assume that one airline suddenly faces some hardship. Technically, it is possible for them to take the aircraft from some other airline who has a spare aircraft to lease it and use the operations. Or you can position a ferry flight. You can actually ask an aircraft spare in some other place to ferry to your place and arrive to be used. Then, if there are two flights which are underloaded, let's say there is a flight from Delhi to Mumbai at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and let's say both of them are 1/4 full, then it's quite possible to simply merge the two flights. Okay, push all the passengers from the 3 o'clock flight to the 4 o'clock flight and that way you can consolidate two unloaded flights. In worst case, you can actually cancel a flight so that the next one, which has got larger load, is not disrupted. This is the last resort because this means massive loss in revenue and also lot of payment in cancellation fees and charges. One could look at crew recovery. So crew recovery means if you have a large pool of manpower, you can deploy the reserves crew from standby. In all large airlines, in all big cities where they operate, they do have some crew members which are on short call. That means they are not on duty, they are probably resting. And after resting, they are now qualified to operate, but they are on a break. And at short notice, they will be required to come and take somebody's place. Then you can fly crew from A to B to allow the crew to take flight from B to C. That is called as deadheading, and many of you are aware of this. This is a very big cost for the airline because the manpower is transported from A to B just to be able to fly from B to C. Then you can split the crew, one legal, one reposition. So all the crew that you operate on the aircraft, they have certain legal constraints under which they have to operate. And if you have an Arab situation with the crew, it is permitted once in a while to use what is called as repositioning. That means a crew member from some other duty can be positioned here, but in the presence of a senior person, it will be considered as permitted. You can also swap crew across two affected rotations. You can, if the aircrafts are same or if the crew is qualified to fly both the aircraft types, you can just swap them. Okay, it's difficult. It is difficult, but it is possible. Then we have passenger recovery. So if a passenger is there, if there are passengers who are not being able to be accommodated because you are merging two flights, you can rebook them on the next available flight of your own airline. This is what mostly is done by airlines. This is the normal procedure. Even if you have a ticket which is like valid for the whole day rather than only just one flight, for a charge you can actually rebook the passenger. Now, if the passenger wants to do it because of their own issue, you can charge them. Okay. For example, recently I had this experience that I was traveling from Hyderabad to Mumbai and I had a booking by 8:30 p.m. flight. But there was a flight at 5:30 p.m. and there was a flight at 2:30 p.m. or 2:25 p.m. And my work got over much early. So when I called the airline, they said, look, if you are going to change your ticket, you will have to pay change fee of rupees 3,150. And then you have to also give the fare difference. It so turned out that the total cost was coming more than 5,000 rupees. So I said, forget it. I'm happy to stay in the airport for 3 hours rather than spend rupees 5,000. Okay. Then when I called them again next time, they said, oh, right now the change fee is 3,150, but the fare difference has come down. It's going to cost you only 4,000 rupees. I said, that is also a bit too much. Then they advised me saying that take a chance and go to the airport. You have a 8:30 p.m. flight, but you go to the airport for the 5:30 p.m. flight. If there is a seat vacant in the 5:30 p.m. flight, they will push you in that and they will charge you only 2,499. So I said, fine. But then there is a issue that there is no guarantee. You go to the airport, the flight is full, then you have to keep sitting for 3 more hours. So I was mentally prepared for that. But then third time when I called the airline, they said that, the change fee, will be the same, but the difference in fare is now only 472 rupees. So I said, okay, that much risk I can take. So, depending on the passenger's capacity to take the charges, right from 5,000. Generally speaking, as you are nearer to the flight, these charges should increase. But I was surprised that nearer to the flight, the difference in fare was reducing. And that is because of yield management. As you know, dynamic pricing is what decides the fare price. You can also interline to another carrier. That means you have two friendly airlines, both are members of the same alliance. You can tell them, take my passengers. So this happened to me also once when I was traveling internationally. My flight reached late. So the airline was Air France. They put me on a flight by some other airline and they said, our passenger, we will adjust the fares. You please take our passenger because our flight has come late because of no fault of his. He has missed the flight. So this is called as interline to an airlines carrier. Then you can do proactive rebooking before cancellation. Okay. Basically, what it means is you tell the passenger only in advance that, look, we have shifted you to this flight. If it is okay, please go ahead and do it. Otherwise, you have no option. You have to give refund as well as compensation. So these are the ways in which one can use AI tools to recover from an IROP. And now we'll look at these, the process of recovery. So what we do is that there are many AI models available with airlines today, which can be trained with the data that is available from the weather feeds or the ADS-B and ACARS. These are two avionic equipment. Okay. ADS-B, as you know, stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. This is a transport on every aircraft which will communicate. ACARS is a messaging system. ACARS is also a system which is used for communication, right? So then there are crewman systems. These are related to the group of crew members. So when data is available from all of these, you will be able to incorporate them in the model, and that can be used to predict the upcoming IROPS. Okay. So by monitoring this data, AI tools can detect disruptions on the fly, and therefore they can help in the quick response. AI can also generate scenarios as to what kind of scenarios will happen. So looking at multiple factors, they can generate scenarios in milliseconds and give the option to the planner. Then they could also rank that. You can ask AI, okay, please rank the options in terms of cost, rank them in terms of delay, rank them in terms of operational issues, okay, impact on passengers. So depend, and you can also do multiple ranking. You can say 50% weightage to cost and 50% to the impact on passengers. It will work out and tell you, if you have this kind of objective, this is the best way to do it. This kind of a thing is very difficult to do manually, and experts are not able to do this. Okay. But remember one thing, AI tool is a tool. It is not intelligent on its own, and it can make mistakes. It can come up with ridiculous solutions. So therefore, an approval from an expert is needed. So whatever recommendation AI gives, it is only as an assistant to the expert who cannot imagine all those scenarios because of human limitations. But the decision is taken normally by an expert controller. Leaving it to only AI can lead to disasters or very, very horrible situations. So there is a continuous feedback loop because every decision you take, that gives you some knowledge for the future. So if the similar thing happens in the future, you can get some knowledge that it happened last time we did this, it helped, and therefore this is the good solution. I'll reiterate this point once again. It's human in the loop is always there. AI will never be allowed to have full and unrestricted authority in decision making. Okay. Yeah, so the AI does not replace those. These controllers are basically the IROP controllers. These are the airline staff. Basically, it just overcomes the human limitation of data crunching and gives the options and scenarios so that the judgment can be taken by the experts. Okay. This is a typical operations control center where information from various sensors is being inputted, tabulated, and presented, and then scenarios are run and decisions are being taken based on the proposals given by the AI tool. Let's look at three cases from real life, two of them successful and one of them is a failure. Just to understand. So here is a case, again, this is winter, Southwest Airlines. There was a storm called Elliot in December 2022. 16,900 flights were cancelled over 9 days. You can imagine it was called as a white winter. No complete network was affected in the entire US, which is the busiest sector in the world. Okay. So there was a crew scheduling system called Sky Solver. This particular system was supposed to help in identifying which crew member to be taken and put on which route for what particular purpose. Because of the overload of data, it crashed. Therefore, the controllers had to manually call the available crew. Imagine the people in the IROP control room, the so-called IROP controllers, are calling up people and asking, hey, where are you? Are you available? Are you legal? Are you allowed to fly? Can you come? How much time will you take? Is that airport near or this airport near? The result of all this is massive loss of almost $0.8 billion to this airline. It triggered a system overall because they realized that if things like this happen again, we could really go bankrupt. And, they got up actually to the fact. So they did a system overall. They spent $1.3 billion in the overall. And they came up with mandatory real-time crew tracking. They invested in that particular facility. This is taken as a failure case because it led to a massive loss. Let's look at a successful case. Delta Airlines. In Atlanta, there was a summer convective season in Atlanta. They had a problem. There were afternoon thunderstorms. Because of that, there were 200 plus delays across the Atlanta hub, which is Delta's major hub. There were so many delays building up because of thunderstorms. So the IROPS AI platform immediately flagged the flights which are at risk. Some are not at risk because they are going away from the thunderstorm. Some are at risk because they are coming through the thunderstorm. 3 to 4 hours in advance, it flagged. And because of that, proactive rebooking was initiated by the airline before cancellations were confirmed. As a result, there were 40% lesser customer calls versus other events in the comparable scenario. And more than 8,000 passengers were protected before the gate agents were involved. This is a success case where an AI-based IROP system gave advanced 3 to 4 hours notice for the controllers to manage the situation. Let's look at one more case. Again, winter, this time in Frankfurt, Jan 2021. The airline is Lufthansa Group. Unexpected heavy snowfall. 60% of movements at Frankfurt were suspended for 5 hours across all the fleets. Okay, Lufthansa and its group, all fleets. So now what they did is Netline Ops++, they were evaluated using this software. 12,000 and more recovery scenarios were simultaneously across 3 fleets were investigated. Right? The result was within 8 minutes, just imagine, within 8 minutes, we could get a complete reconfiguration of the multi-fleet plan. So what would take 1 hour, what would take 4 hours, took just 1 hour for the recovery time. And hence, this also is labeled as a success. Now, how do airlines measure the performance of IROPS? So there are 4 key parameters. One is on-time performance or OTP. For us, OTP is something else. But for an airline, OTP stands for on-time performance. As I mentioned, 15-minute delay is not counted as delay. So what percentage of flights are arriving or departing within 15 minutes of scheduled time? That is the on-time performance. This is the primary measure. In fact, every airline will boast on their website or in their advertisement that we have more than 85%, 90% OTP. Basically, what they want to say is that 90% of the time our flights operate without 15 minutes or more delay. Then you also have something called as cancellation rate, CLR. The cancellation rate basically is how many flights which were scheduled have been cancelled because of this? The target varies. The large airlines who have more operations and they travel longer distances, they also have a requirement. They have different types of aircraft. They have different constraints. They have around 1.5% cancellations or less. Target is that. But the low cost airlines, they operate same type of aircraft. They operate on very, very specific and short routes generally. And for them, cancellation is huge loss of money. They don't have the buffer to take it. For them, the target is less than 0.5%. So 0.5% of the flights are cancelled, and that's considered to be okay. It's expected. Then you have TTFR, time to full recovery. So disruption has started and the whole network is affected. How much time does it take for you to use AI or experts or both, whatever, to attain full recovery? So less than 1 hour is the time for standard events. But if the events are a non-standard, it could be more. For example, in the war scenario, suddenly if a country closes the airspace, okay, you will not have enough time to plan for it. Of course, some indications come in advance. But suppose something happens or a volcano erupts at some point of time. You don't have so much advanced information, so you should be able to take care of that. Generally, the target that AI has set is that within an hour, you should be able to achieve full recovery. And finally, it's all about money. It's all about reputation. So there is something called as cost per event. Total recovery cost per IROPS event. There are expenses towards hotels for the crew members, expenses towards fuel, additional fuel. You have to make money to passengers, deadhead of crew. All these factors are cost factors. So if you had X disruptions and if you spent Y, then Y upon X is the CPE. This also has to be minimized. Now for this, we don't have a number because this number is secret and airlines have their own internal targets. So the sources of this presentation, which was made by your teaching assistant, Yash Kapshikar, are these listed here. Okay. If you are interested, you can go and read these documents in more detail. That will help you understand the nuances of air transportation much better. Okay. So with that, I would like to proceed further and open up the floor for some queries from the learners. First, we will take some queries which have already been communicated, and then we will open up the floor if time permits for queries which are from the people. So Vishal Kumar Sahu has asked a query that a state may ban another state to exercising the first freedom over its sovereign airspace. Could you point which article or treaty states such exception from first freedom, if any? I don't think there is any such article. It is just that because it is sovereign airspace, I own it. And when I own it, I have the right to refuse. Many airlines do not exercise this particular right because it is a big financial loss. So one example of this is our friendly neighbor Pakistan. So after the Balakot airstrikes, in the knee-jerk reaction, Pakistan closed the airspace for Indian aircraft. So our aircraft have to divert via Gulf or via the north, via Afghanistan to travel towards the eastern destinations. A lot of loss. There was reported some 850 crore loss to various airlines. After about 4 or 5 months, Pakistan unilaterally opened its airspace because they realized that the revenue that they were losing, because when you fly over a sovereign country, you have to pay the navigation charges. So those navigation charges you don't pay if the aircraft don't fly. So they realized that they were losing so much of money towards their earnings for navigation charges. It was not worth making this political statement or a knee-jerk reaction. So after a few months, they on their own opened the airspace. Now, for an airline from India, it is much, much less expensive to fly over Pakistan You can pay those charges, but the amount of fuel and time you save is much more. So we also agreed. We said, okay, if you're opening their space, we will be happy to use it. So there is nothing like any treaty exemption. It's just that because it is sovereign airspace, I can immediately close it. Divya Varshini, very beautiful name. Divya Varshini K. In the lecture, you explained the key stakeholders in civil aviation, such as airlines, airports, regulatory bodies, passengers, travel agencies, and technology providers. Could you please elaborate how these stakeholders interact with each other in real world? My God, all of them are operating together at the same place. So there is no option but to interact. Can you imagine a scenario where airlines and airports operate independently? Impossible. Can we have travel agencies not all connected to passengers? No. So the nature of this particular operation is such that all these stakeholders, they have direct connection to each other. That is why we have to take inputs from all these stakeholders before we decide any policy or any procedure. Okay. One example I'll tell you, the Navi Mumbai airport recently has opened up. In the initial days, there was a massive conflict between the airport authority, the one that operates that airport, that is the Adani, and the providers of mobile phone technology, these mobile phone companies. So people who operated from Navi Mumbai airport, they said that our phones are not working. Immediately there was a backlash from the passengers and from the taxi companies saying that how will the passengers book us? How will they approach us if this is the way in which you operate? So then they were brought to the table, and now I am told that there is some negotiation which has been completed. And now apparently the mobile phone network in the airport is working. Otherwise, those who were early passengers, they were forced to use Wi-Fi. So they would get down at Navi Mumbai airport and then they would go and look for some Wi-Fi, maybe from some shop, maybe from some other source, and then only use it to communicate with the people who have come to receive them or with the taxi company. So unless they work together, it will be a chaos. Very good question. Okay, Prachi has a question. Can you please explain what are the other factors influencing the amount of wake turbulence other than max takeoff weight? So first, let me answer this question. So generally speaking, max takeoff weight is a direct indication of the size of the aircraft. And larger the aircraft, more is the lift required for it to maintain lift equal to weight and lift more than weight to fly. Therefore, stronger is the wake turbulence from the wingtips. Generally, so that is why what we do is, generally we say, okay, if the aircraft is heavy, medium or light, this is the wake category. That is what it is. But in reality, the amount of turbulent wake that an aircraft produces is a function of its geometry, of its wingspan, of its maybe the wing shape, maybe the aerofoil geometry, maybe the wingtip, whether there is a wingtip fence or not, whether it is scimitar type, whether it is blended type, chartered, etc. All of these things matter. It so happens that this aircraft, Boeing 757, by virtue of its design, although although its weight is not in the heavy category, but it has been found that the turbulence it generates is equal to that of a heavy aircraft. So that's why they made an exception saying that this aircraft cannot be considered just because of the max takeoff weight of 116 tons. It is generating more weight, therefore it is in the heavy category. So this is an exception to the normal rule because of observed large turbulence behind a 757. Now, why does 757 have more turbulence compared to other aircraft in its weight category? I don't know because I did not design it, nor did I have any access to the design data. But from the operations, it has been found that the wake turbulence generated by the aircraft is very high, comparable to much bigger aircraft, and therefore we have slotted that in that particular category. Rishi Shankar Jha has a question regarding evaluation. He says that the introduction of multiple correct options in multiple choice questions has increased the level of complexity, which makes the assignments quite challenging and may create difficulty for students in securing good marks. But in the assignments and final examination, in some cases, the answer may seem subjective and open to interpretation, which may lead to confusion. Okay. Since this is the first time, I request you to consider making the question single option correct, similar to other courses. This approach may help students feel more confident, stay motivated, and perform better. So, Rishi Shankar Jha, what you have put is purely one side of the whole story. You are talking from a student perspective, where, according to you, securing good marks in assignment examination, okay, is apparently more important for you. I can understand that, but please look at my perspective. My perspective is that we don't want students to guess the answers. We want students to be confident about the question. We want them to check all the options peacefully. If they have a doubt, they should go back to the videos and check. Because our focus is not marks, our focus is learning. Our focus is appreciation of the nuances of the question. So according to me, a question is not completely answered if all the correct choices are selected and no wrong choices selected. Okay. This is a way in which we try, or I try in my examinations, to ensure that guesswork is avoided. Okay. But what has happened is this multiple choice system with one answer correct system, which has been used all over the place, is essentially encouraging people to not go for knowledge but for guesswork. And because of that, you have a very false notion that I know the subject, but actually you don't know. You have just guessed your way out. Or you have gone for the process of elimination. That is not our purpose. Okay? So, take up this course if you are really interested in the subject. When you do the assignment, you have enough time available. We are not saying that this is to be done within 2 hours. In the examination that you will appear, again, we will introduce a small number of multiple choice questions. In fact, to be very frank with you, there were some questions where only one answer was correct, but we used to call it as MSQ to check your confidence level. Are you confident that yes, only choice C is correct? Although it says MSQ, but only C is correct. But requested by NPTEL, so we changed it to, so we have made more questions of MCQ where only one is correct. In the assignments, I'm not going to make it because I am not interested, or I'm not focused to only your marks. I'm interested in checking. The difference between watching the videos of an NPTEL course and getting a certificate is only this, that we would like you to understand the subject, not just gloss through. So I'm sorry, it may seem tough to you. I'm sorry. Life is not easy. You need to pull your socks up and answer the assignments. Believe me, if you do this in the assignments, you will find the end semester exam or the examination very easy, and you'll be able to score very good marks. Okay. Chinmay Gandre has a question. Why does an airline do a financial lease rather than directly buying an aircraft from the manufacturer? Are there any benefits? This question is something like after watching Ramayana, you ask, why did Ram kill Ravan? Was there any benefit? Look, the whole lecture has brought out the difference between leasing and buying. The same thing applies to your car. The same thing applies to your house. Okay. Why do you rent a house? Why don't you buy a house every time you want to stay somewhere? You can't afford it. You cannot find so much money. Why do you buy a car on loan? Why not buy it with full down payment? Simple. Because if I had so much spare money, and if I really felt that this is something I really badly need and I don't want to, and if I'm financially okay, I would buy it. Leasing is done because buying is not possible, either because of financial limitations or because of, okay, some airline may have a short-term plan. I want to explore the business for 3 years, 4 years. If I succeed, I'll continue, or else I will exit. If I buy an aircraft, I'm stuck with that damn 1,000 crore aircraft. What do I do with it? I have to sell it at the end. And when I do a panic sale for 1,000 crore aircraft, I may get only 200 crores. So that is why people do financial leasing rather than buying. So please watch the lecture very carefully. You will find ample discussion on why leasing is. In fact, in lease also there are various types. There is a wet lease, there is a dry lease, there is a damp lease. Okay. So even within lease, there are options of committing more money or less. Okay. So with that, we have come to the end of our presentation, but we still have some time. So we will open the floor for any questions that you might have. So we are open. In case you have any queries, you have the YouTube live window, and you can also ask questions here on Zoom. But I think there is nobody else currently in the meeting, so there will be no questions on Zoom. So I think with that, we will stop our session. Okay, there are some questions. By Anoop Soman has a question on the chat. Okay. This is on YouTube live. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, sir. I am an MTech CS graduate having software industry experience and worked on airline domain few projects. I would like to know if I can apply for a PhD in aerodynamics or air transportation. You cannot apply for a PhD in aerodynamics for sure, but you can apply for a PhD in air transportation if there is a faculty member in the department who works in that area. Unfortunately, currently I am the only faculty member working in air transportation and I am retiring next year. So I cannot take a new student. In fact, I have stopped taking students 2 years ago. So, but remember, there is a department called as IE and OR, Industrial Engineering and Operations Research. And that department also has some students, some faculty members who have aerospace background. In fact, one of our ex-students is a faculty member there. So you might be able to get a good project there. Plus, there is a logistics hub funded by, I think, Amazon. So you will be able to get good problems to work on for a PhD in Department of IE and OR. So 100%, no problem. You can do that. And he says, I am from Bangalore, mostly in coming month visiting IIT Bombay for some department work. Interested if I can visit. 100%. You are welcome, Anoop. I will just send you my email address on the chat window. And you can just send a mail to me. If you drop in without announcing, you may be disappointed because our calendars are normally full. And therefore, we always request students or visitors to tell us in advance, and then we can fix up a slot which is mutually convenient. So you are most welcome, Anoop. I'll be happy to meet you. And you will also be able to meet our teaching assistant who actually lives nearby. So yes, you are welcome. In fact, anybody is welcome, but with prior fixation. Don't drop in. Dropping in can be disappointing. All right. Any other information that anybody needs? Okay. And for students reference, could you please share today's slides or notes? Yeah, we will upload this. We do upload. In fact, see, slides are something that we normally don't upload. What we do is we make a PDF. We make a PDF of this PPT and put it on discussion forum. So yes, you will be able to get it. And also my request is that if you observe anything which is incorrect in the slides, please let us know so that we can also correct it. That will be a big help from your side. So yeah, the PDF file of the PPT will be available to you. But the video is always available because this is available on YouTube for future also. So if there are no more questions, then we can stop. Thank you, Anup, for your comments.